there. I, the private toon detective Sam Valentino, had another one of my famous wild hunches that the Walt Disney Company would start to cut down on their still fairly recent craze in remaking their animated features in live action. This comes off the recent news that their planned live-action and CGI remake of Bambi is not assuming any further production, especially after losing their director, Sarah Polley, last year. And it's definitely for a bit better, as this is always one of Walt Disney's most timeless masterpieces, and even one of Walt's all-time favorites he produced.
Yeah. Normally, I'm the one who rants about these live-action remakes on this YouTube channel, being a Disney toon myself and having been doing so for nearly 9 years now. But in this case, I figured my detective friend should be the one talking about it.
You got that right, Wolfie. Besides, regarding Bambi being remade, Saturday Night Live already beat him to the punch of a hilarious sketch 11 years ago, done in response to 2015's live-action Cinderella movie, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as an adult Bambi, made up in deer ears and a wig, vowing revenge on man for killing his mother in a deliberately epic action-adventure. Of course, that was just a parody sketch, but The Rock is still a producer on the Moana remake coming out later this year, and reprising his role as Maui. But even with that coming out, there's also the news of Disney canceling their live-action remake of the Aristocats last year, along with shelving a planned remake of The Sword and the Stone, and the live-action CGI remake of Robin Hood, announced almost 6 years ago, is still in development hell. But we still also have remakes of Tangled and Hercules in the works, along with a movie focusing on Gaston, the blowhard villain of Beauty and the Beast. This is where my hunch comes in. It appears Disney is now going to phase out remaking any of their older animated classics in live action, and focus on only remaking the anime movies from the 90s onward. And the reason why is because it's all pinned on that darn Snow White remake from last spring, turning out to be such a huge box office bomb for the Walt Disney Company. It earned only $205 million worldwide, against the roughly $270 million budget. Surprised? Not really. People knew darn well that the Walt Disney Company was tampering with one of their cherished masterpieces. And they were also complaining about the character changes, most notably Snow White becoming more politically correct, along with the freaky CGI animated dwarves. Heck, it got to the point where families found A Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, to be a much better flick to take their kids to on a weekend. Despite it being a limited theatrical release, that turned out to be a mild success. It's ironic. With the original 1937 animated Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, people thought it was going to fail and said it'd be Walt Disney's folly. Only turned out to be such a big hit, being the world's first full-length hand-drawn animated feature. Walt took a big gamble there and it paid off. Yet with remaking Snow White live action, that pretty much could indeed be Disney's folly. But then 2 months later, the Lilo and Stitch remake was released. And that was understandably more successful, grossing just over $1 billion worldwide. Besides having just a $100 million budget compared to the Snow White remake, people also found it considerably more faithful to the animated movie in several ways, from the CGI Stitch model to even having Chris Sanders voicing Stitch again. But even with that, Disney's highest grossing film of 2025 turned out to be Zootopia 2, and rightfully so, being an animated sequel we all actually wanted. And it's not just because I'm a detective fox like Nick Wilde. So with all that, it would make sense Disney would decide that remaking any of their pre-90s anime movies wasn't worth it anymore, just stick with remaking the classics made since the 90s. But to be fair, in that sense, I know Pocahontas isn't going to be remade after all, and rightfully so because of modern sensibilities. Their remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame is also still in development hell, and they also won't be remaking Tarzan anytime soon because of complex legal issues with the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. I'm also reminded of how in 2019, Tim Burton's Dumbo remake was also a flop, while the remakes of Aladdin and The Lion King were big financial hits, the latter annoyingly so. There's also a few years ago, when Disney's live-action remake of Pinocchio, directed by Robert Zemeckis, ended up winning the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Remake or Sequel. And I've got another hunch that the Snow White remake will probably win the Razzie Award in that category this year. With the Pinocchio remake, the only thing in it I enjoyed was their CGI version of Foulfellow, aka Honest John, being a fox and all. Plus, he was actually animated so well, way more expressive than the CG animals in the Lion King remake, coupled with Keegan-Michael Key's voice performance. But it seems to me the Walt Disney Company is slowly starting to wise up.
They'd better be.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Times have been hard for them for a few years now, even under Centennial. Warner Bros. Discovery wasn't the only one suffering on its 100th anniversary. But yeah, to sum it up, I still stand by my wild hunch that Disney is now going to stick with only remaking their animated classics from the 90s onward, and cancel the ones from before the Disney Renaissance that are still in some form of development or pre-production. This will be a big step in the right direction. Another will be to properly promote their own original animated features instead of just reserving that for the sequels. But of course, like I said, Zootopia 2 is a sequel everyone actually wanted to see for a change, compared to Frozen 3 or, God forbid, Toy Story 5. And Disney's announcing for the umpteenth time that they're going to revive hand-drawn theatrical animation again. But from what I heard, they may not be ready to do a full-blown theatrical animated feature that way again. But rather, they'll be producing theatrical hand-drawn animated shorts. And I have to say, that would make a lot of sense. Such a short can still wow people, seeing one before a live-action or CGI animated feature film. But I guess that wraps up my explaining my theories for now. This upcoming weekend, I'll be tagging along with Zach Wolf to Anthem New England 2026. But because of its Western theme, I won't be out as much compared to Zach, who's ready to go all cowboy for the con. But of course, stay tuned to this channel for any more of my hunches or findings or rumor debunking, or whatever else Zach and the others here have to show off.